Brilliant. So we are now recording. I will start again. This is Julia Davis of Yoga Teachers Forum and Circle Holding. I want to apologise for my kitchen background again. My background on Zoom is not working at the moment, but I'm here because I, together with Tessa Vanutu-Sanderson, run Circle Holding and Yoga Nidra training. And Zoe Harris is with me today to really talk about how you practically put the knowledge that you learn in the training into practice, and how she's done that in her teaching. So Zoe, over to you. Maybe talk about the Yoga Nidra first.
Okay. Oh, thanks for inviting me. Well, basically, I teach quite a few classes on a weekly basis in Somerset. And before I did the training, I was using Nidra only really in workshop settings. And I tended to read them from a script. And I did have one that I used quite a lot. I got quite sort of good at doing the body mapping, but everything else was basically being read. And I didn't really have much confidence to go and write my own. I didn't really understand how to write my own. So that's what I got out of the training, was an understanding of the different elements of a Yoga Nidra, what they, their role in helping people relax and quieten their minds. And then actually getting the confidence to start writing my own. And well, I've even got the confidence now where I start ad-libbing a little bit. I've actually started bringing Nidra into some of my weekly classes. I have a Wednesday evening class. I think it's that midweek slump, isn't it? So that Wednesday evening class, last week, for example, they all just said, "Can we do a Nidra tonight?" So I was like, yeah. Whereas in the past, I'd have been thinking, well, I haven't got a script with me, and and sort of worrying about it. Whereas now it's just like, yeah, we can do that. And I'll just sort of do the beginning bit, the settling in, getting people settled, which is really important, isn't it? I mean, that's one of the most important elements of it, really. So, but it's understanding that from the training. I wouldn't have known how you have to spend quite a lot of time to settle people in. So now I can do that easily. And I realized I was actually doing it a little bit beforehand, but not understanding that's what I was doing and why I was doing it. So I suppose the training has given me the confidence, because I've now got all that background knowledge in that context. So yeah, I use that quite a bit now in classes as well. I've actually started writing my own, which is nice. So I've actually got unique Nidras. So I wrote one because I did a retreat last year. So I started doing one for that was whilst we were actually doing the training. I started doing one for that. But I always run every Christmas, or just before Christmas, just before you finish for Christmas, I always do winter solstice candlelight yoga sessions. And they're really popular. So I wrote a particular Nidra script for those sessions. And I think I mentioned that during the training, actually, because I did actually do that for my my written piece of assessment. And so that went down really well. So I was able to sort of do this sort of winter solstice thing, really nice theme around sort of wintering and hunkering down for winter and getting all cozy in the cold. So that went down really well. And today it's equinox, and I've got my Wednesday class, who I know are quite keen on Nidras. So I've got a little one written tonight to use for equinox, which will be sort of playing on those opposites, the sun and the moon, and the day and the night. So yeah, I've got quite into it, really. It enables you to be quite creative, doesn't it, once you've done the training and you know the different elements, and how you can, if you've got a theme that you want to sort of incorporate into your Nidra and into your wider class, because we generally have themes, don't we, for classes and workshops, then I can sort of bring a Nidra into it and incorporate that into a theme and sort of write a little bit around that I can then bring into the class or the workshop. So yeah, I found it really good, to be honest.
That sounds great. So there's lots of ways. So you're bringing them into your general class.
Yeah.
Your students in your general class saying, "Zoe, please can we have a Yoga Nidra?" You've gone from scripted yoga nidras that you would read, even though you were confident with the body mapping.
Yeah.
You've become really clear on the importance of settling.
Yeah.
And you've now got events that you're running. I mean, I should have clocked the tone. It is absolutely spring equinox. So you're now able to theme things for winter, for the spring equinox, and you're getting a variety of, so the intention of the training is for you to go, if you've never taught Yoga Nidra before, you can start from scratch. But if you have been sharing, so you did have a level of knowledge of Yoga Nidra, maybe you've been using scripts, to move to have the confidence to create your own. And I love the fact that you say that you're ad-libbing as well. So you're actually confident enough to not even have anything written down, just have like an idea in your head. And like, because you get the concept of it, you know how much time you might want to spend on various aspects of the Yoga Nidra, and to use it for a special event like the candlelit or the spring equinox, and just in your general classes as well. And particularly knowing that, you know, the Wednesday evening class is possibly a class where people are a little bit more tired, so you might use Yoga Nidra more often in that class. Hopefully that's really clear for people to see, and also for people who potentially want to come to your classes to see that that's something that you're doing. I'd love to hear also about what you took from it, because sometimes when people, I mean, the title is kind of Yoga Nidra and Circle Holding. So people might choose to come to it because they really want to learn more about Yoga Nidra, and the Circle Holding is like, oh yeah, fine, well, whatever that is, that is. But it would be lovely to know from you what you've taken from the Circle Holding training that takes place in, you know, in the course.
Well, I must admit, when I signed up for the training, it was because of the Yoga Nidra, and I didn't know an awful lot about circle holding at that time, but I thought, just from the little bit that you'd written, I thought, well, it might be useful. So, you know, and I want to do the Nidra training. And I must admit, I found that really helpful as well, because I run, I'm already a trained yoga for menopause teacher. And so I've been running yoga for menopause workshops around sort of Somerset, Devon and Dorset, and I do them occasionally online as well. And I was already running those sort of, I've set them up as us all being in a circle, but that was sort of it. I didn't really have a good cohesive feel to actually running those circles. So I found the circle holding training really useful for me to be able to sort of plan my menopause workshops much better. So I now, again, because you've got the different elements of the circle holding, like the settling in at the beginning and the arriving. And so, for example, on Sunday, I ran a menopause yoga workshop in a village near here. And so what I did is I planned it so that we're all in a circle, and I set the mats up like that. And obviously with something like menopause workshops, you need lots of props and bolsters and everything, because it's a lot of restorative yoga. So what I did was I read a few words. Well, I don't know if you're familiar with Kate Codrington's Second Spring book. Really helpful book. So I used the elements of seasons of life and that she uses, and I read a sort of few sentences around the seasons of life and explaining about how that then relates into menopause. And then I got them to do a breathing practice first. They were all lying down, they were all comfortable, I all got them very nice and sort of relaxed with some diaphragmatic breathing, and then I read them these words. And then they slowly came round and we sat up, and I asked them to tell me which season they felt they related to most at the moment, as a way of getting the conversation going, so that we could then talk about our experiences around menopause and the different stages we were in, because some people were post-menopause, some were perimenopause, some were just arriving towards perimenopause. So it was quite useful exercise. And again, it's meant that I can also close the workshops in a better way, rather than just sort of finishing them. I'm sort of making them a lot more cohesive in the way that I plan them. So I found that invaluable as well, really useful. So I hope that sort of makes a bit of sense. And yeah, and I'm using that as well in retreats as well, rather than, you know, I mean, again, I tend to run retreats, retreat days and retreat weekends. Well, I've only done one retreat weekend, but I've got another one coming up in October. And again, I tend to try and do those in a circle, and they're all very relaxing events. I mean, the emphasis is really on them being very unplugging from the busyness of life. So again, I get people to settle in and arrive and really sort of chill out, sort of try and sort of unplug from that busy mind. And yeah, and I use a lot of nidras in those as well. So yeah.
Has it helped you confidence-wise, you know, having those two new skill sets? Has it made you feel more confident about your offerings?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I mean, well, especially with the nidra, but yes, it's definitely helped with getting people to talk, especially in the circles, getting people to talk more. It's interesting though, because you have different workshops. Like the whole workshop I've done recently, they weren't so interested in sharing experiences. They wanted more of the practical skills. Where another workshop, I didn't get to teach them as many practical skills tools as I'd like to, because they were all so keen to share their experiences, and I didn't want to sort of stop them really, because I could see they were getting so much out of it. So with that one, it was more of a sort of circle of sharing, rather than me being the instructor and giving them all these sort of techniques they could use. Whereas another one, it was more of me being an instructor, and we were using a little bit of the circle training that I'd done, just to sort of mainly for me to plan the workshop more than anything. Whereas in another situation, like I say, you're actually using it in the workshop a lot more because of the way people want to interact. So yeah, it has made me a lot more confident about it.
So it gives you versatility, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because it means that every group's different when you're running a workshop, and people can learn a huge amount from each other.
Yes.
You can kind of take a back seat and allow them to learn from each other when you've got those circle, you're using those circle holding skills in that way. They're much more of a participant in the workshop than kind of following a guide.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I think I mean, when you've got a situation like that, you don't want to. I mean, I could see that there was a couple of people there that they felt quite on their own. And so this was one of the first times they'd really been able to open up about what they were feeling and experiencing in their lives in relation to their perimenopause and their thoughts to their loved ones. And those thoughts were scaring them and making them worried, which understandably it was making them more anxious, which obviously would then make their menopause symptoms worse, because it's just ramping up the cortisol and the stress hormones. So by the end of the session, they were sort of being a lot happier about things, because other people in the room were saying, yeah, I feel like that as well. And we're able to sort of completely relate to that experience. So it just means people can go away feeling less alone, and less like they're bad people, they're bad mothers, which was what a lot of them were feeling, because of the way they were thinking, when in reality they weren't thinking anything that any other person that was going through menopause wasn't thinking, but they just didn't have anyone to talk to about it. So it's quite nice being able to give people that space, which, I mean, in a lot of times we don't get, do we, sort of in day-to-day life. So that it's giving people a safe space where they can open up and talk about things, which is what the circle holding has enabled me to do. I was already trying to get there, and I think I've got the added skills to make it feel safe for people now. So
so that's one of the joys of circle holding, is that you can address things that are tricky, and because you've got those skills in place, you can kind of monitor the level of sharing, and you can ensure that everybody in the group has an opportunity to speak, and it can give you that level of confidence when you're dealing with tricky issues like menopause. to go there and give people an opportunity to share. So thank you so much, Zoe. I think what we've learned from you today is that the skills that you learned in the training gave you the confidence to share a whole variety of Yoga Nidra, to really understand the different components of Yoga Nidra and work out how you want to use them. So you've mentioned the settling and the time you now spend on the settling. You mentioned the opposites and how you enjoy using that, and you might use it in your spring equinox event, and that you use it in your general classes, and also it's like a special treat in workshops as well. And the other thing that you mentioned is with regard to the circle holding, that you use it much more in your workshops and in your retreats. So to let people know, how can you train the way that Zoe trained? And then Zoe's going to just share a little bit about herself and where you can find her. If you're interested in learning the skills that Zoe's now been using so well in all her classes, and Zoe, you were a kind of an experienced yoga teacher before. So when you think about whether you want to do the training, bear in mind the experience Zoe already had and brought to the group. And that tends to be the case in the training. Some people have got a lot of experience and some people are new. So I would say you're one of the more experienced yoga teachers who joined us. That if that's what you're looking to do, then Zoe has taken that training and practically used it during the training. One of the workshops you talked about was you were doing during the training and after the training. So if you're around on a Monday, 12:30 till 2:30, that's GMT. I think it's not. It's BST by that time. It's summertime by that time. We've got the spring equinox coming up. Then it's a really practical training that begins on the 22nd of April. It is on Zoom, but it's very much live, and the intention would be for you to attend as many of the live sessions as possible. And you can book that either through circleholding.org or yogateachersforum.org. Both, you can find them on both of those websites, and you can find us on social media. Zoe, you've told us that you've got an event coming up. Do you want to tell people a little bit more about where people can find you, and what, because you said like where your local area is, and whether what you're doing is what you've got in person and what you've got that is online?
Online, I run a sort of membership, which is 5 half-hour classes a week. And that's on my website, zogayoga.co.uk. But also, I've got a really relaxing autumn retreat coming up in October, which is a lovely, beautiful place. Very sort of, it's in a private valley in mid-Devon. So it's very tranquil, 200 acres of private woodland, a swimming pool, hot tub, really beautiful yoga studio with a heated floor. But because it's sort of cut off in its own little valley, it's so easy to sort of feel like you've unplugged from the busyness of the world. So yeah, and it's 3 nights. So I do Yoga Nidra on 2 nights, the Friday night and the Sunday night. And then on the Saturday night, we have a bonfire outside and do stargazing and things like that. So, and then of course, there's all the yoga and there's woodland meditation, because we can make use of the woods as well. So, and yeah, so that's in October. All details of that are on my website as well. So if you want one of those sort of weekends where you can just unplug and have a really relaxing time. And my husband's a vegetarian vegan chef, and he's doing good for us. So
That just sounds completely divine. It sounds really wonderful. And it's just so heartwarming for me to hear you say that, because when we run these trainings, that's what we want, is for people to go out and utilize what they've learned in beautiful settings. And I just love that you're going to be using your circle holding skills and your Yoga Nidra skills in such a beautiful retreat. What a fantastic offering.
yeah, well, when I did the retreat there last autumn, the owner of the venue, she lives on site, and when she realized I was doing a Nidra on the Sunday evening, she said, I've got space for me to come along. And I said, yay. So she just slipped in and did the Nidra with us.
That's brilliant. Well, if you want to contact me, Julia Davis, you're welcome to do so, or Zoe. And if you're watching this on recording, then feel free to DM us or message us if you're interested in either of our offerings. And thank you for joining us. I'm gonna stop the Facebook. and stop the recording.